not, you're part of the Park Chats series. Park Chat is a collaboration with the library and with the National Park Service. Our goal with this is to have more opportunities for park rangers to get into a community space, to be able to present about the history and the stories of Hot Springs, and try to get more local community members in midweek kind of presentations. So we've done a history of the park. We've talked about the restoration of downtown bathhouses. We had a canceled event that was going to be about the archaeology of Hot Springs. And then next year, we're hoping to use what we've learned from the Park Chat series this year to be one of our main presentation points for our America 250 celebrations. Mm-hmm. So next year will be 250 years of U.S. history. And we'll try to figure out how to put Hot Springs into that national context, right? So the stories that we tell of this seemingly humble community have literally changed the country in really wonderful ways. And so then today, we're going to see how Hot Springs records that history. Turns out we have almost 700,000 items in our archives. They are maintained by some of the most wonderful library professionals that you'll meet in the United States, primarily Mary and Tom. And then also Ellie, one of our interns. So we are generating, with Preserve, we also generate new generations of professionals. And so this was a day, little pivot. We were going to talk to Little Rock Central High School, but Tom and Mary and Ellie were able to bring items from our archives that can, again, tell the story of this place, whether it's in the last 200 years or the last 200 million years. Mm-hmm. Right? We have this incredible natural and cultural story to tell here that we're all part of. So without further ado, we'll have Tom present, and then at the end, we'll have questions, and I will practice being a moderator.
Thank you, Ranger King. My name is Ranger Tom Hill. I'm the museum curator and the archivist for the park and the research librarian, although Bob is my volunteer that helps. So we brought the whole team today. If we could have got the park archaeologist in the truck, she would have been here too. But anyway, what we do is we take care of your stuff for you, because unlike people in maintenance call me a hoarder because I'm trying to keep everything that the park has, but we're really here to keep all of these items in trust for you. All of these items that belong from the park or come from the park are your property. So we're just the caregivers. That's what curator means. It means keeper. You'll hear, I've curated a wine collection for you or something like that. Well, that's different. That's an advertisement. I'm a keeper of collections in museum setting or in a library setting. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about museums in general and the Park Service, and then museums specifically here at Hot Springs. So the National Park Service has lots of responsibilities nationwide. The one that I'm concerned with is the primary responsibility for care and feeding of cultural resources. The cultural resources we find, protect, and share. What that means is the park has all sorts of stuff, and by our scope of collection statement, I'm only concerned with within the park boundary, not the history of the city or the businesses across the street. I just take care of stuff that came from the park, either archaeology or building pieces or whatever. But we research or study those items once they've been located to figure out what are they, what is the importance for this object to the park, and then how do we protect it, how do we preserve it as opposed to conserving it so we can keep it forever. Entropy always wins, physics always comes out on top, so nothing's going to last forever, but we do what we can to make things last as long as possible by the materials we store them in, the conditions we store things in, and how we handle things. But then why do we have that stuff? It's to show people or to teach people with. So like Kane will give a ranger guided talk and he might show some artifacts if I let him show artifacts. But anyway, I have the stuff of history, he has the story of history. So together, that's the entire 100% story of Hot Springs. So we come up with ways that we can use these items in exhibits, use them in presentations, use them in online. In the case of Mary, when she's working in natural history collections, how do we share them with the world without making people actually come here to look at our plant specimens? But what are we talking about when I say cultural resources? The Park Service breaks it down into 5 categories. Archaeological sites and materials, in other words, things you dig up from past evidence of human occupation in the spot. Cultural landscapes, what have we done to the landscape to make it human looking? What buildings have we added? What parks have we made or glades have we created? ethnographic materials, which is the study of the cultures that live in this area. We don't have a whole lot of ethnographic materials in the park because we don't have a whole lot of information about who came before us. This is the homeland for the Caddo and the Quapaw, the Osage, the Pawnee, a bunch of other tribes. But they were here for the past 10 to 12,000 years, maybe more, depending on the latest archaeological study. But we don't have a lot of material from their era. We find stuff in the park, but it is usual, or we have stuff in the collection, but it's usually items that someone has bought from a collector to show on display because we didn't actually dig up one of those items in the park, say like a pot or something that's Caddoan. Historic and prehistoric structures, bathhouses, for example, or like the pagoda, which is a drinking fountain pavilion up on Hot Springs Mountain. And the most important of all these, museum collections. That's what I am most concerned with. Now, what's the purpose of National Park Service museums all across the country? Well, it's to collect and document objects, preserve them, and teach people about them. Use them in some way, exhibits, talks, web pages, whatever. Now, the way we can use them is provide them for, like the guy in the upper right-hand corner up there, a visiting researcher. I just hosted a guy this week from Seattle, and one day last week. He's here studying the second Arlington Hotel, the one that burned down in 1923. So he wanted to see what we had in our archives in the way of water contracts, letters to and from the superintendent and the secretary of the interior concerned with that concession. The other thing we do is create exhibits. Say like, this is the gymnasium. All of those items, the loose stuff not affixed to the wall, those are all artifacts in the collection in the Fordyce Gymnasium. And then we do interpretation, whether it's wayside signs like in the lower right-hand corner, or Kane's talks to the public, or my talks to the public. What we usually do in the summertime, if we have enough help, is give behind the scenes tours. So you can come see the collection, and we won't show you everything because there's, like Kane said, 700,000 items in the collection, but we'll show you what we can. And we brought some of it today, and I'm going to show you a picture of every single item. We're going to be here a while. Now, most museums collect stuff. It might not be very specific to the place where the museum is. Now, that's what sets Park Service museums aside from everybody else. Our museum collects only things from our park. I'm not worried about stuff from Little Rock Central. If I come across a postcard or something that has to do with that, I will transfer it to Little Rock Central. And likewise, people all over the country, when they find something related to Hot Springs, they don't know why they have it, they ship it to me. Our collection is specific to our park. Most all the items came from within the park, especially the archaeology. And so we're interpreting these objects in their original context. And a lot of museums, like the Wedding Dress Museum or the Cannonball Museum, they have wedding dresses and cannonballs from all over the country, not just from the spot where the museum shows up. And that's important when you're a place like Gettysburg or Hot Springs, where there's really deep history that's happened there, and people want to come hear what the story is, plus see the objects of history that came from there. Nationwide, the Park Service cares for over 50 million objects. That used to be listed as a much higher number, but they separated out archival material. We care for 88,000 linear feet of archival material. So like this blue box right here, this is approximately 1 linear foot. You could put probably 1,500 sheets of paper in there. So that's a lot of paper and words and maps and drawings and photographs nationwide. We have 433 units in the Park Service. 390 of them have collection items. Not everybody has collection items. We have 6 centers, in other words, the Midwest Archaeological Center, the Western Archaeological Center in Arizona, the South Central Florida Collection Storage Facility in Florida, 7 regional offices. The Park Service is broken up into 7 regions, and every regional office maintains an archive of material that that office has created. Plus, there are MPF's multi-park facilities, like Independence, Missouri is an underground storage facility in an old mine. They store stuff from like 10 or 15 different parks. We are, we are going to become a multi-park storage facility. May not happen in my lifetime, but we're working on it. The old government bathhouse up on Spring Street that we call the Libby Physical Medicine Center, that is going to be the park's collection storage area and a multi-park storage facility for the Midwest region soon. So everybody hold your breath for that to happen. Plus the Washington Sport Office, or WASO, has a collection storage facility, a giant one on the East Coast. Besides, there are about 1,200 MPS storage facilities, and then besides that, there are non-government facilities, institutions that store stuff for us. That's mostly what Mary's been dealing with. We have plant collections that are federal property. They were collected in Hot Springs National Park, but the collector, like botanists do, took them with them and traded them all around all over the place. So they're in herbaria all over the country and some in Europe even. So they're still Hot Springs / federal property. They may not realize that. So Mary contacts places where she discovers that there are plant collection items and politely reminds them that it's federal property forever. Would you like to open an outgoing loan from us to have those items legally? Some cooperate, some don't. Anyway, so there are lots of schools, and like the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, University of Harvard, BYU in Utah. A lot of places have plant material that came from Hot Springs from collectors that have been coming here for over 100 years, even before we were a national park. But we're still federal property. We've been Hot Springs Reservation from 1832 to 1921, and then we've been Hot Springs National Park from 1921 to today. So we've been federal property where people have been coming, taking stuff home with them, collectors, without there being a process for removing collection items since 1832. Here in Hot Springs, we have 716,381 objects. And just like the numbers for the Park Service, that number, just about the time you write it down, is wrong because we're adding stuff all the time. Mary finds another 85 items in a herbarium in California, or our archaeologist digs up 50 more bottles because we put in a new water line and she's gone through a place where a bathhouse used to be. So we're recovering all the archaeology, and we're mandated to maintain, to keep all the archaeology that we dig up in the park, even if it's from a illegal dig. So like a lot of the stuff we have in the collection is somebody was out bottle collecting in the woods or whatever. They're caught by law enforcement. They go for a 24-month vacation in Texarkana. All the bottles after the court case comes to me to put in the collection because it might come up again. So anyway, of these, but there's two major breakdowns in the type of items we have. There's natural history collection items and then cultural artifacts. And each one of these little red numbers shows how many of those things. There's not too much paleontology. I don't have any dinosaur bones. We do have a lot of other kinds of bones, like cows and things that were dug up on Bathhouse Road because they used to roam freely in the creek bed. Most everything, over 600,000 items are archival material. Drawings, maps, photos, reports, all sorts of paper goods, two-dimensional objects usually, or like a great big report on the thermal water from 1904, Haywood and Weed. So like on geology, I'm not going to show you a picture of every geological specimen, but these are generic. There's a piece of quartz. And then the other groups that we mostly talk about are Big Fork Chert, Novaculite, and these little web patterns on there, those are called dendrites. That is a crystallization that looks like where a tree root has grown across, but it's not. It's crystals growing across the surface of Novaculite. And then calcium carbonate or calcite. And that piece right there was from a pipe, a water pipe in the park, because the water has minerals in it. The minerals precipitate out of the water, and it leaves that clear material, calcium carbonate. If it's mixed in with something that was from the soil or whatever, we call it tufa, and it'll be discolored. It'll look like lava or some other, whatever color of material that it was polluted with as it was running across the ground. Paleontology, we have 9 items, and these, the thing on the left here, this is they look like marks on the shale there. That is graptolite colonies. Those are little tiny organisms that were prehistoric, well, ancient microorganisms that lived on the sedimentary rock that was here when this was an ocean. When this whole system was being laid down as the bottom of an inland sea, those were little critters that were living on the sea bottom, and then as they died or whatever, all of that sinks down and becomes part of that rock, and that fossilizes over time. Nereid's trace fossils over on the right, that is also an undersea, an animal moving across, feeding like a horseshoe crab or some sort of worm, some sort of arthropod, moving across the sediment, eating, and that's the trail that it left like 200 million years ago. Now that rock turns up laying by the side of the trail on Hot Springs Mountain, and it just so happens that summer we had an intern with us that was a geology student, and she found that. She didn't have to knock it loose either. I think somebody was excavating, but anyway, we'll go there. And then in biology, there's a plant specimen there. I brought some examples to show you up close. Plant specimens, we have insects. We're not actively collecting insects or plants. Mary has collected recently some things that we didn't have featured in our collection that figure prominently in the park. But we don't actively go out and look for moths or monarch butterflies or whatever anymore. We have a small herbarium, we have a small insect collection, but how the collection is growing all the time is because we're finding all these specimens all over the country. The Smithsonian, for example, has 4 wolf pelts that were collected in the park in the 1940s. And to keep it kind of vague, they showed the location of collection as Grandin Central. I'm like, I don't think so. Anyway, Texas red-headed centipede, the closest I've ever had to come to move out of Hot Springs was being chased by one of those one time. They're about 1 foot long and no fun. They're not afraid of anything. Another plant specimen. The reason we show you this one is, this is an old specimen from a collector named George Letterman that was here in the 1890s. That's just to prove to you that the collection, especially the plant collections from botanists visiting the area, are really old when we find them in different places. Now, we have the rhinoceros beetle or the longhorn beetle, just lots of insects. Mary, did you bring a Cornell box? Butterflies? That's okay. We have a lot of different butterflies, although we don't collect them anymore, because especially monarchs used to come through by the billions, and now we've seen 1 or 2 maybe this year crossing through the park. Wow. Our park archaeologist this is where she would jump up and start talking, but anyway, we have Indian artifacts not collected from the park, but are representative of what would be in this area. So that is a shell necklace that would have been Caddoan, but it was purchased for display by one of the bathhouse owners. So it's Caddoan, it's from Arkansas, it's just not from Garland County or from within the park. It is true that it was an artifact shown in the park at a bathhouse, and it just happens to be it's the correct placement. It is from an area of people that lived here. Floor tile from a previous bathhouse. Every bathhouse you see today is the last version of bathhouses to be in that location. Like today, when you go to work in the Lamar, that's Lamar number 2. There was a wooden Lamar before that one. There was the Hot Springs Hotel before that, and stuff before all of those. Before the Fordyce was the Palace Bathhouse. Everything's had something else underneath it. Like right now, you go down into the basement, if you don't, you have to jackhammer up the floor. But anyway, where the Lamar used to sit, there's evidence of the foundation and the old floor for the bath hall still there. We have about 7,000 items in our collection from when they were stabilizing the current version of the building by digging into the ground underneath in the basement. So lots of records being kept in the park. So there was always a lot of ink bottles to be left behind. And that is a piece of incised pottery. So that is either like the Quapaw or the Caddo would have created. There's a water jug, and the brick in the lower right-hand corner says Malvern on it, but it's not from Acme. It's from Malvern Brick and Tile. MBT was the 1925 to 1973 that the Cora Garvin, what's her name, the Garvin Gardens lady. Anyway, she owned it, and it sold to Acme in 1973. So that brick, you need to know that story because you're trying to figure out why was that brick dug up next to the Fordyce bathhouse when they were digging a trench. Well, 33,000 of that kind of brick were made for the Army Navy Hospital. Several of that kind of brick are in the White House in Washington, D.C. Why they're located there is because maybe it came from the Palace Bathhouse before. Maybe it came from the old government bathhouse that used to be up on the hill back behind. So we keep that as a piece of evidence that somebody doing that kind of research can come look at in the future. This is a hammerstone, so when a Native American would have been here using the Novaculite, the primary stone they were coming here for, they would have been using that hammerstone to make flakes, to knock off and make the tool that they wanted to make out of Novaculite. And those are floor tiles from the original Ozark, the Ozark that's in the basement, or the current Ozark. So like, if you go down in the Ozark right now and go into the unincorporated, the crawl space underneath, you can stand the humidity, you can see the old floor level for the old bath hall, and those are from the men's bath hall.
Wow.
We have a giant art collection, and there's basically two kinds of art. We have an artist in residence program that started in the early 2000s. We have 200 or 300 pieces of art from the artists that have been here to live in the park and create. Plus, we have a lot of artwork, figurines, models that were part of the original exhibitry in the old admin building that were made by the Harper's Ferry Center. So the Park Service exhibits used to be all manufactured by Harper's Ferry. Now they're coordinated through there. So like we're doing new exhibits, new wayside signs. Harper's Ferry is incorporated in the project as the designers, but a contractor will actually build the stuff now. They don't try to keep all those artisans at Harper's Ferry anymore. But we have a lot of artwork. That is a depiction for an exhibit in the Fordyce of the Hunter Dunbar expedition coming into the Hot Springs area, and it shows what downtown looked like when we got here. So we have lots of art. And then what most everybody wants to see is the 70,000 or so three-dimensional objects that are historic. Early IT equipment. This is a folding cardstock cup, a paper cup from the Buckstaff Bathhouse. There's a stereograph, and it's depicting the first Arlington Hotel. And then there is a chemical bottle. I don't remember what that's from, but there was a chemical bottle discovered in one of the bathhouse basements. And then there's a lot of porcelain or painted metal furniture. There's a couple of pieces of Nilo pottery in the collection. The lounge, or the cooling platform there on the top center, is an original piece of furniture with a horsehair insert and a leather cover. Imagine how that felt in a hot, humid building. But that is a cooling table from the Palace Bathhouse. And if you turn it over and look underneath, there's a piece of wood underneath, and it says PBH on there, so it's Palace Bathhouse. We say bathhouse as one word today. The previous bathhouse owners called it bath and house, two separate words. So the acronym for who owned the furniture was PBH. And that's a 2-pound Indian club that's currently on display in the Fordyce. When the Fordyce was remodeled in 1988 to be our visitor center, they went out all over the country. Harper's Ferry, Carol Petrovich, went out all over the country to find the furnishings to go in the building to make it look like it was 1915. That's one of the Simcoe 2-pound clubs that she found, because it looks like the kind of things you'd use for juggling, but that's not what it was for. It was a type of arm exercise or shoulder exercise that you did. And the heavier the club was as you were building more and more strength. You start out with dumbbells that are really light, move up to a 2-pound, and then later there's like a 15-pound club. You have one in each hand. But Indian clubs were not Native American Indians either. It's India. It was a craze that was brought to the United States through England that was from their colony in India. It was still to this day, when you see one of their body weightlifters, they're usually lifting wooden or metal clubs or like a kettlebell. Anyway, we have some in the collection. And what most people come to research, archival materials. We have reports, 1 billion postcards. I brought that one, Liz, because that's a picture of Irving Townsend walking on Hot Springs Mountain. Oh. I just published an article in the Record about Irving. And there's a telegram from WPP, that's William P. Parks. He was the doctor that was the last reservation superintendent and the first park superintendent. And they had all of the responsibility, but none of the authority. The superintendents early on reported directly to the Secretary of Interior. Any money they were going to spend, any change they were going to make, any road they were going to grade, all had to be permission directly from whoever was the secretary or the undersecretary. So we have a lot of correspondence to and from the park. No, you can't do that. Here's what we prefer instead. I have a letter here that's signed by the first director of the Park Service too. So this is a collectible. Stand back. This is Stephen Mather's signature. He was the first director. He was Assistant Secretary of the Interior, and then once the Park Service was created in 1916, he was the first director from 1917 for a few years. We also have the second in command, Horace Albright's signature on some things, but I couldn't find it in a hurry, so I didn't bring him. Anyway, and then we have a lot of handwritten correspondence from the concessionaires, the hotels, the bathhouse owners, to the park superintendent. That is from Mr. Fry, the manager of the Arlington. A lot of negatives. Thought you might like to see this one. That's downtown where the Noble Fountain was when it was, I always say the Noble Fountain migrated. It originally was built at the south end of the Magnolia Promenade. It was right out at the corner where the sidewalk down the front of the bathhouses stopped. There was a drinking fountain there, Noble Fountain, and up by the Arlington Hotel, there was a drinking fountain on that end that was called the Hoke Smith Fountain. They were all named after the secretaries of the Interior that appropriated the money to build them. But that, with the Noble, they were afraid was going to get hit by traffic coming around the corner because Valley Street was still the street then. So they moved it to that location, and it almost got run over by a truck. So they moved it in 1950s up to where it is now as the centerpiece for the entrance plaza to the south end of the Grand Promenade. So it was made in the 1890s as part of the Reservation Improvements Program, but I consider it's migrating east slowly. I brought this picture, which is a roads and trails of the park, but it shows the brand new Grand Avenue around the outside of the edge of downtown, and it's called the Bypass. I'm like, really? So it's the inner loop for Hot Springs. And then there's a print photo of the Imperial Bathhouse. That's my favorite bathhouse of all of them. It's not there anymore. That was the only bathhouse on Bathhouse Road that didn't face west. It faced south. It was right next to where the admin building is. If you notice on the stairs, the big wide stairs to the right go up to the Army Navy Hospital. This little narrow staircase right there was how you got up behind Bathhouse Road to get to where the promenade was going to be built. And if you go there now, this is the south end of the promenade, but if you look at those two retaining walls, the steps aren't there for this anymore, but the two walls are still there. You can see where the steps used to be. They just took them up so people wouldn't continue to use it.
Is that Reserve Street?
Yeah, this is going up Reserve.
Yeah.
You're standing, this is also, the reason I brought this photo is because the only vestige of the Eastman Hotel is still pictured. It's still out there. See a little concrete pillar on this side of the street? They had two pillars like that on each one of the inner and the outer driveway for the Eastman Hotel. And those two pillars for the upper driveway are still there. When Mary and I come in the morning, we pat it on the head every time we go out. Good morning, Mr. Eastman, because that's the last vestige of that gigantic hotel that was there.
Replaced by such a beautiful building.
Yes, the lovely federal building. Okay, so the next question is, okay, how do I take care of my stuff at home? Because all of you have historic photos, you have stuff from your grandparents, all these things you'd like to preserve. What we're all fighting, whether you're a museum curator or a home curator, is the agents of destruction or the agents of deterioration. There are 10 of those. And how you battle those things is with the materials that you use and the places that you store things. So that's what we brought. The first and most important thing, no matter what condition anything is in, is called dissociation, or not being associated with its history anymore. The object, any object, a shoe, a silver cup, anything has the meaning that goes along with the object itself. That's the difference between a display and an exhibit. A display is like in a shoe store. You put a shoe out there or a pair of underwear or whatever you're selling, that's a display for that item. But if you associate some meaning to that, like a museum does, like that's Theodore Roosevelt's underwear or shoe or gun or whatever, now that's an exhibit. The exhibit has taught you something you have the associated meaning. And that's called the provenance or provenience of that object. Well, if that background meaning is lost, it's dissociated, it's just a pair of underwear again, it's just a shoe, it's just whatever it is. So what we try to do is maintain what the object is, why is it important, and keep those associated with the object. So we have this giant hairy database called ICMS that there's a picture of the item, a complete physical description, where it came from or where it was found in the case of archaeology, and that's how we keep the meaning associated with the item. And that's how we find it too. In there is the location where we have it stored. But everybody has to deal with the threat of fire, and then you're constantly battling temperature and humidity. If you're keeping items at home, remember the items want to live just about where you do. If you have a trunk full of old letters or newspaper clippings from your grandmother, they don't want to be in the attic, it's too hot and dry. They don't want to be in the basement, it's too cool and moist. They want to be where you are. Maybe not in a leather trunk, but in boxes like this is an acid-free, lignin-free, museum quality, in other words, box. They're very expensive, but that's worth it to keep your items together. Photographs you might want to put in a sleeve like this that's open on one side. It will protect the item. It gives it a little bit more structure for handling, and you can also handle it without having gloves on.
Tom, should people ever laminate the stuff? We have people bring in things that are laminated and I'm going, oh, I don't think so.
No, and the world's worst thing, and I had my photos in the 1970s, those magnetic photo albums where the pages were like stuck to cardboard. You peeled it up, laid the photo down, and stuck it back down. Well, all of the glue that had been stuck to the cardboard is now stuck to the face of the image. And that discolors and off gases over the years, and it will mar the photograph. So no, laminating is not good. You can seal things in Mylar, that's cool, because Mylar doesn't off gas, and you're not sealing it completely shut. You're just doing like 3 sides with a drawing or a photo in it, and leave one side open so it has air exchange. It's not getting like damp inside and can't get the moisture out. This is polyethylene. You don't want to use PVC, polyvinyl chloride, polyethylene or Mylar, that's what you want to use. It does not interact with the emulsion of the photograph. It won't select this picture. This photograph is from 1936, showing this is our superintendent that had just left the park to move to Colorado. That's Thomas Allen. And he was brought back because Libby had just been hired like that week when the president was going to be here. And he didn't know anything about the park. So they asked Allen to come back to show President Roosevelt around on his tour through the town. The car is parked on the sidewalk because there are so many Garland County residents in Central Avenue, the motorcade couldn't go down the road. So they drove down the sidewalk between the hedge and the magnolias with Senator Robinson and Governor Futrell. And they've got this big band and, dance and everything from the Army Hospital going on. That's Arlington Lawn back in the back. So this is in 1936 during the president's visit. But I've got that in a piece of Mylar. It's additional support for the paper. You're not hurting it. It's not going to get bent much. And you can touch it without wearing gloves. The idea behind gloves, there's 3 or 4 schools of thought. Some people want to wear white cotton gloves. Those are porous. So it's good for picking up something that's not slick. So like if you were dealing with textiles or something you didn't want to get your skin oil on. If it's something that might be on the objects, like we deal with medicine bottles and we don't know what was in some of them because it might have been homebrew. So we use nitrile gloves. Nothing will pass through it from us to it or from it to us. So as long as you don't tear one, we go through a lot of these. And then archivists, like we were at Mount Vernon one time talking to the archivist there, they don't use gloves because like when you're dealing with onion skins or George Washington's letters to Martha, you don't want to tear the edges because the paper is already in pretty bad shape. So they don't wear gloves at all. They just wash their hands about every 5 minutes. You keep your hands really clean and it keeps all the skin oil off. And you can feel the item better. You're not like feeling for an edge with a gloved finger and maybe tearing the edge of a piece of onion skin or whatever. So if you're storing some photos and they very, very friable, You might want to put it in a cardstock folder like this too. It's acid-free, lignin-free. It's not going to interact with the photo, but it's stiffer in case the picture is really, really weak or is coming apart. Physical forces, sometimes you can help it, sometimes you can't. So like this shoe right here is packed with paper inside because a leather high top shoe like that, if it's just sitting on its own, the top will eventually flop over. And over the years, if it's stored like that, you can't straighten it back out again without cracking the leather. So this has tissue, a certain type of acid-free tissue, pushed down in there. It won't interact with the leather, but it's like there's a foot in it all the time. It's keeping the shape. And that's how you store any textiles too. Like if you have a suit jacket, you put either muslin, stuffed muslin down the arms to keep the arms from being flat and making creases. Maybe even store it with the chest, some sort of form in it where it doesn't become just flat and have creases. Because then if you ever did want to take it out, those creases won't break because they're points of weakness where the fabric's been damaged. So I invite you all to come up and, well, first of all, contact me if you want more information. There's my phone number and my email. We do have about 200 requests for information every year, visiting researchers or people that send me an email or somebody that writes a letter. And we have orphans too, doorstep items where you come in one morning, there's a box there that somebody mailed and said, you need this. And so there it is. Sometimes it's something worth keeping. Sometimes it's another postcard, and we already have thousands of postcards. But the postcard image is not usually why we're keeping a postcard. It's if there's something written on the back. You know, like, I'm hoping I will live because of the bathing treatment I'm getting here at the Lamar Bathhouse or something, or wish you were here, but it's from somebody like Harry Truman was here in town for treatment at the Army Navy Hospital. So we do keep some orphans that are dropped on the doorstep. Some of them, we try to get them back to the person if they left a forwarding address or return address. Or sometimes if it has to do with across the street, somebody, like when the Majestic Hotel burned down, I got contacted from all over the country. I have a bath towel from the Majestic. Do you want it for the collection? Well, the Majestic wasn't in the park. They used water from the park in their bathhouse, but I didn't need bath towels from them. I have bath towels from the bathhouses. So I pushed them all over onto Liz.
We said, oh, goody, thank you.
Yeah, no. Maybe you'll get a second floor in your building one of these days. But not everything in the city has to do with park history, although they're usually tied pretty closely because the park predates the city. Anyway, any questions? Yes.
Yeah, as far as exhibits of what you have.
Yep.
Besides the Ford's bathhouse, do you rotate it or do you bring stuff out and
Not so much with the Fordyce because that's set up to look like it did in 1915. So all the furnishings and the few pieces of clothing, you're back in time looking at that building just as if it had just opened. Where we used to have exhibits that rotated out was in the Ozark, but now we don't have the Ozark anymore. Thank goodness it's been leased. So we had our art collection in there and some items in exhibit cases from the Maurice. So now all of that's back in the Lamar. So about the only place I can rotate anything is the artwork on the walls in the Lamar or the administration building. And the administration building's locked all the time because it's the congressman's office on the second floor. But if you want to come see stuff in the Lamar, we're glad to show people around behind the scenes tours. We hope to do them this summer on a pretty regular basis. But it takes more than just the 3 or 4 of us, because if you get 30 people, then you have to split them up because the rooms this stuff is stored in is very small. Bathhouses weren't made to be collection storage. There's no insulation, everything leaks, and whatever happened outside 3 days ago is happening inside now. So we're just in temporary space until the Libby is finished, and then we can have regular tours, maybe even of the historic areas. We're maintaining 3 areas in the Libby as they looked when it was the government bathhouse in 1921. So there'll even be reason for walking tours from Inturk to come through too.
And remind me, the Libby building is which building?
It's the big white building with a red tile roof across the street. Okay, so it's in a little triangle of land where Reserve runs into Spring Street.
Okay.
Right across the street, there's a humongous chimney there from the boiler room for the Army Navy Hospital.
Okay, and it used to be a,
It was the fourth and last government-free bathhouse.
okay. I don't
And it was also a public health service clinic. And it closed and became a concession in 1959, and then closed down for good in 2007, I think.
Okay.
So it's been empty. And just this month, hopefully, knock on wood, we will start the work on the Fordyce roof, the overhaul of the Maurice, the overhaul of the Libby, and the air conditioning to be installed in the Buckstaff. We have a $32 million project that's taking place that's just getting going right now. We've been planning it for years. But the end result of the Libby will be that it will be our museum collection storage. The end result for the Maurice will be it's going to be leased by someone, we hope. We don't know what that will be yet. During the redoing of the building, we will let proposals on what the building's going to be, or hopefully going to be. Any questions?
Am I correct, a couple of years ago, the Libby, well, first of all, is the Libby, it's not on federal land, but
It is.
oh, it is,
Mhm.
okay, so it's.
That little triangle was given to the city, given by the city to the government to build the bathhouse in
Okay.
1920. And so it, just like the Happy Hollow used to be Arlington property and we traded with them in 1960,
Oh,
it's government property. And it was, the reason I say it was the fourth government bathhouse, it was the first time the government bathhouse wasn't on Bathhouse Road. The first three versions were up behind where the Quapaw is now, up on the hillside in that flat place between the Army Navy Hospital and where the Grand Promenade is. That when it was first built, the brick bathhouse that was there was in between the Horseshoe and the Magnesia, and there was a path going up to the front door. But that path right now would go right through where the front door and the dome of the Quapaw are located. But that building, the old government bathhouse, even with two different expansions, wasn't large enough because they would bathe 500 or 600 people a day. So they built the big giant bathhouse up on Spring Street, and the bathhouse was the upper level, and the United States Public Health Service clinic was the lower level.
now, wasn't a couple of years ago, they were looking for like an investor or developer to come in and
Yeah,
apparently nothing happened, or what happened?
they put out a request for proposals for making the Libby be something else, either a bathhouse or a restaurant or whatever somebody wanted to offer. But there were no viable alternatives presented. So that never happened. We'll do the same thing with the Maurice, and there will be several people are already interested. So the Libby, I guess it's a bathhouse in town, but it's not on the main drag. It's not downtown. So if some people, I guess they didn't make a proposal because it wasn't down where everything else is. For museum collection storage, yay, that's perfect. We're far away from the public as you can get and still have them come in if you want to show them they're on a tour. But yeah, in the past we tried, but it didn't happen.
Thank you, Tom. Let's use this last 12 minutes to let these nerds nerd out
Okay.
your all's items.
Okay, everybody calm down now. We did bring all different kinds of items. There's a postcard, a stereograph, different size photo prints. Here's a mounted photograph. This is the Lamar bathhouse, whose evidence is in the basement of the building that I'm working in now. That's the first Lamar. And then Mary's got a couple of plant specimens, and we brought one piece of art.
And should people walk up one
Yes.
by one or en masse?
You can come up here and I'm gonna have my eyes on all of you. Especially, see what, if you're interested in these different types of boxes for storing your items at home, you have to pick these up and look at them. This is a good one. This is an archival box with a prop. You want everything to be flat. You don't want it to bend because the box is not full. So you put this acid-free cardboard in there to keep their folders standing up straight, keep the items straight until the box gets full. But anyway, this is also wax coated. It's not waterproof, it's water resistant. So it would at least, like even if you're in a building with sprinklers, if the water goes off, it'll protect the items until you can either throw a tarp over them or get the water turned off or get the fire stopped, whatever. So same thing with this box. This is the next size up. It's a B-size box, but it's made out of plastic. This is corrugated plastic or Coroplast. So it too is water resistant for a longer time than that. But it's not waterproof because it's got lots of holes and folds. It's not sealed. It's just why if you had a whole bank of these sitting on the shelf like we do in the Lamar, they're resistant to water until we can make the problem go away. And we keep giant sheets of plastic everywhere in case the sprinklers go off by accident, and we can cover them all. Yes.
Yikes.
The sprinkler system in the visitor center at Fort Smith froze and broke one winter and got everything in there. The collection, the exhibits, their offices, everything was soaked and frozen because it was still cold outside. That was fun. That was very depressing to go help identify what to do to help them. But y'all come on up.